It's really very, very exciting to go to your first games as an athlete. You dream of trying to compete at the Olympic Games as a young kid coming through within your sport, and then you finally get selected. Even though you've been to World Championships, you've raced the same people at international regattas and all sorts of different events, but to compete at that Olympic Games is very, very special.
You can't beat the experience of arriving in Beijing at their magnificent new airport and then travelling into town, seeing the whole city prepared for the Olympics, everybody ready, all the plants out in the street, all the people ready to show you around, the information desks, and just the atmosphere. The atmosphere around the Olympic Stadium, around the whole Olympic Park was absolutely electrifying. It was really exciting to be there.
I thought Beijing was magnificent for us as the media. It was fantastic for the athletes. If you talk to all of them, they said they were treated like kings.
Qingdao certainly put a big show on for us. It was known as the sailing city, and the community really took on board the fact that we were coming, and it was you know, it was a real kind of spectacle for them.
Being in Beijing in the Olympics in a work experience was totally satisfying, because you had one of the great modern day Olympics going on. You had a great British success story.
The atmosphere and the venues themselves, I thought, were again spectacular. I mean, you look at the Water Cube and the Bird's Nest Stadium, and only really in China and Beijing could you have achieved that.
The 9 Olympics that I've been to, is each one has been delivered to about the same sort of level, maybe a little bit better in some areas than others. There's about 17 different areas that the IOC actually look and monitor over the period of time of leading up to those games. And most of them are pretty similar for every games.
We had the opportunity to visit the media centre and the broadcast centre, and it was absolutely fascinating talking to some of the 21,000 journalists and reporters who were there. They'd go and live there for maybe 6 to 8 weeks, and that's their only experience of the games. They move from their hotel bedroom into the media centre, and what becomes very important to them is the quality of the canteen, the quality of the air conditioning, the quality of the environment that they're working in.
There's only a few things you need for the media centre for it to work. You have to have space, so that you can sit there and be comfortable all day and work. You have to have a Wi-Fi that always works 24/7, and you have to have a backup for the Wi-Fi, and you have to have catering facilities 100 yards away that are edible and somewhere you can relax and have a cup of coffee. And actually everything else after that is a bonus.
Well, it's very difficult for me to talk about the facilities for the media, because I'm very lucky. I just turn up. If there's a microphone, I talk. Initially, I gather from the people who do the hard work about setting things up, there were a lot of inevitably linguistic problems and logistical problems in getting everything set.
One of the biggest problems is, of course, that the technology changes. And while it's fine saying we want the most high-spec technology for us, BBC, NBC, whatever, there are a lot of broadcasters who won't have migrated down that scale. So they have to bear in mind that they're working with quite a broad spectrum.
The British companies were involved in a number of the facets, involved in the new terminal at the Beijing airport, involved in some of the major stadiums, were involved in the catering arrangements, were involved in the swimwear that the swimmers were wearing, were involved in the power arrangements around the Olympics. So from all aspects, from infrastructure through to actual sports equipment, British companies featured very largely. And I think really what that showed us, what it reminded us, is the enormous economic and business opportunities that are going to be coming from the London 2012 Games.
On the plus side, the sponsors in Beijing really got behind the Games, as well as the global sponsors. On the downside, the experience for the general public, for the fan, was, I think, quite limited, and that was partly down to the organisation of the event.
I think one of the interesting things to note about Beijing and the facilities they provided is that their legacy concepts are quite different from those that we have to have in the UK. They'll be providing national stadia now using the facilities following the Games, whereas we in the UK, who already have existing facilities, are looking at using ours as temporary facilities.
I'm very interested in architecture, and you know, the fact that Herzog and de Meuron built the stadium, the Bird's Nest, and I was very interested in that kind of thing, and I think the real investment that that China made for those Olympics was just incredible.
The way that the city is becoming so modern, has become so modern, so groundbreaking in some of the architecture. The Chinese television stations, national TV station building. Just I kept, every time I went past it, I thought, how does that not fall down?
The Bird's Nest Stadium was fascinating and was very successful on television. I think there wasn't a lot of connection between the Bird's Nest structure and the actual seating inside it. The seating inside it was very much a concrete stadium with the Bird's Nest placed on top. But again, it looked very good. And the cube for the aquatics for the swimming and diving, again, changed colour, looked very splendid on television, maybe not the most complex of buildings.
I'm not certain we're going to be able to compare the buildings that are planned for London with the buildings that were built for Beijing, because the circumstances are very different.
But the bottom line is, do they do the job? Do they provide good viewing facilities for the spectators? Are they easy to access? Will they be ready on time? It's a simple kind of A, B, C, D. Tick those boxes. I just don't see the problem.
I think when the Olympics come to London that we're going to have to show people more of London and more of the cultural variety that London has to offer than maybe Beijing had to offer.
For me, the key lesson from Beijing was to think about the spectators, and the spectators found it difficult getting from A to B. So London has 3.5 years, 3 years, 2.5 years, however long it might be, to get that right.
First of all, you've just got the construction. You've just got to get it right, haven't you? We've got to have we've got to deliver all the sites. They have to be delivered, in fact, a year before.
I also think that London has a great opportunity to extend, I guess, the reach of the Games, both outside of London and the South East, but also in terms of the duration. I mean, obviously, the 4-year Olympiad has already started.
The Games will have to be spectacular, they'll have to be inclusive, they'll have to make sure the whole of the British public is involved with them. They'll have to make sure they unleash forces of culture, of volunteerism, all the things that are going to happen.
What is key is that London stages a happy, party, all-inclusive games that everyone at the end of it, when the final curtain comes down, people say, that was great fun. It was run magnificently. You
had that cultural experience, that different real culture in China, and it was great to experience, but I think London's going to bring something, really, really different, and the fact that I'm, it's my home Olympics, and that I can, really feel that there's a great sort of spirit from the home crowd. I think that's really going to add to it massively.
London really has to step up to the mark and make sure that the spectators' side of it is even better than it was in Beijing.